I'd like to invite Elmira. Yep, we're coming in. Elmira to do a fireside chat with Hanzade.
Yes, great. Okay, great, thank you. Hello, everyone. We are standing between you and cocktails.
Challenging time.
Right. It's a little bit challenging, but we're gonna keep it short and we're gonna keep it fun. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a big fan of Burak and Etohum, but I'm also a very big fan of the woman sitting next to me. And she's been recognized, rightly so, as one of Turkey's leading businesswomen. She is the founder of an e-commerce company called hepsiburada.com, which is an online retailer in Turkey. She is a fellow Columbia alumni. I went to Columbia as well. And she's very involved in the digital platform space in Turkey. And so really exciting to be able to get your insights about all of those things. But I think what I wanted to start out with is this is an unusual week here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley because everyone in the world has descended upon San Francisco and Palo Alto for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. And I know that you were invited by President Obama and the White House to come here and speak. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing here and what you're going to be talking about at the summit?
Yes, I'll be speaking at a panel called Shared Economy together with the CEO of Airbnb, Andy. And the message I will give at the panel, I can share with you in a couple of sentences. I want to give the message that as Hepsiburada we are proud to be pioneer of a shared economy platform because we see our platform as a platform that helps the transformation of retail industry. We are different from other global players in the sense that we don't like to use the word e-commerce disrupts retail. We like to, rather than see ourselves as a disruptor, we see ourselves as an enabler, as a help to the whole industry. And as many of you know, we've launched our marketplace platform with this philosophy, and it's great to see that merchants from around the country through their sales, their customers through our platform. So those are, about the summit, I will also, on Friday, I will also make a call to the VC community in the Valley to come more to our region. And that's also an important message I'm going to highlight at the panel.
Yeah, and I think the things that you touched upon are really important. I think that people often look at particularly e-commerce and digital commerce, and they don't really understand. They think, you're buying and you're selling and you're doing all these things, but I think you using the word enabler I think it's really key because you're not only enabling people to do shopping, but you're actually enabling people to create their own businesses and their own jobs. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about Hepsiburada and what you're doing with that, because I know that there's a lot of different things going on with that.
Sure. Hepsiburada started as an online retailer, but transformed itself to be a platform business. And at Hepsiburada platform, when a merchant comes to our platform, we don't just give the merchant visits and customer base, but we also share our analytics data. We give them insights, we give them how to price their products, how to campaign, how is their brand compares to their competitor. So it is really an enabler in the sense that we help offline retailers, brands. We launched our fashion category this year, and in our fashion category, all the leading local fashion brands are on our platform, and they do more sales on our platform than they do on their own online site. Because it's a learning, and we try to share all the insights about analytics, about data with our merchants. Also, our fulfillment center, it is, on our fulfillment center, we also give space to our merchant. So we have, because it's a difficult process to handle single item shipping. So for those merchants who doesn't have that ability, we also give space on our fulfillment service.
I think this part about learning is really critical. I think what's really unique about Hepsiburada is that it's not just the online retailer, but you are actually enabling other entrepreneurs and other businesses to be able to sell. And I think the key is learning. And I think that a lot of people who are here, I think anybody who goes to any startup conference is not only looking to network, but I think they're looking for insight and to learn from things. I'd love to hear a little bit about what the challenges of Turkish entrepreneurs are that you've seen, that you are helping retailers with. What are the challenges that they're facing? I think that because I've watched the Turkish startup ecosystem for the past 10 years, and I have to say I'm really just amazed at how far it's come. It started with e-commerce, but now you're starting to have Turkish entrepreneurs start their own businesses online and become very creative, but I'm sure that you're really seeing some of the challenges that they're facing. What are some of those, and what are you seeing?
I was giving a Reuters interview this morning, and I got asked the same question.
Oh, good. Look at me.
It's a very good and relevant question. And I have to be honest here. The entrepreneurship in our region, actually not just Turkey, but I can even include Europe, but more our greater region, is tough. And it is tough for two very specific reasons. 70% of global VC funding goes to Europe. Can you believe? And then 15% goes to Europe, and the rest goes to Middle East, Russia, Africa, so Asia. So it is like the funding that is available in our region is very, very, very limited. So this lack of funding, scarcity of this funding, entrepreneurs tend to do proven business models rather than do innovative, groundbreaking models, because the limited funding goes to the proven business model. So it becomes a chicken and egg problem.
Right.
Like everyone asks, why there is no innovation out of Europe? Why there is no innovation out of Middle East? Because innovation doesn't happen if you don't try and let 10 of 15 companies that you try fail. Otherwise,
right.
It doesn't. So that's the one challenge entrepreneurs face. The second challenge is culture. I mean, here in US, especially in Valley, you have a culture that promote is not the right word, but that people are not shy and ashamed of failing. People are proud of the companies that they had to write off, but they tell what they learned from those lessons. Again, in our part of the world, the culture is, you end up being ashamed and
Ayıp,
exactly. So, and again, I mean, entrepreneurship does not flourish to its full potential if you don't have that culture that promotes innovation, trying. Success doesn't come before you hit a couple of rocks. Having said that, so those are the challenges. Having said that, I believe the Turkish public have in their DNA the entrepreneurship spirit. And I see in Turkey, our CTO Mitu started working with some groups in Ankara, in Teknokent, and in Istanbul Technical University that does a very impressive work on AI and machine learning. So we do have entrepreneurs who are trying different things, but it's tough.
No, I did, and I was in Istanbul for several months in the winter, and I went and I saw a virtual reality. I went to the Bahçeşehir University where they have the virtual reality clinic, and a couple of the Turkish startups who are doing virtual reality. And you're right, in Ankara they're doing a lot of things with artificial intelligence. I want to touch on this point that you talk about with investing, because I think Turkey there's the cliche that it's between East and West, and it's the bridge, and it's a crossroads, but I think that, in many ways that there's some truth to that. And I think that the challenge that Turkish entrepreneurs have is they have a very big market. 80 million people is a sizable market. However, it's not big enough if you actually want to think about being a unicorn. So I think Turkish entrepreneurs, on the one hand, they want to look at the domestic market, but then they want to think, they want to be able to think globally. And you want to bring in investments there. And I think you're right. I think you touch on this point where I think investors are either looking in Europe or they're looking to the Middle East. How does not only Turkish entrepreneurs, but then Turkish investors, how do they actually work on taking advantage of the fact that I think, geographically Turkey does, logistically it can get to Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, to the Caucasus, to Russia, to Asia. Turkish Airlines, I think this is one of the reasons that it's become a big success is because geographically where it's located. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, the challenges that Turkish entrepreneurs face, but in what direction are they moving into?
We are moving in the right direction, I believe, because entrepreneurs, even the platform we are meeting today, it's a proof that we are moving on the right direction. We are promoting entrepreneurship. We are, trying to raise more funding for the country. I also think we need to be fair to our country. Unicorns don't come out of Europe either.
That's true.
So, look at Europe's GDP and compare to, their GDP and their wealth. They have not produced, except like Sweden and Skype, that's years ago, probably 10 years, right, since Skype came. That's Spotify, which is not a groundbreaking technology. So what, real innovation came out of Europe? Nothing. So, I think compared to Europe, we are still doing good for giving all the conditions.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that, and I've certainly seen in the 10 years that I've been watching the Turkish entrepreneur system, as I said, I've really seen how it has evolved, and so they've gotten they started with the digital and they started with the e-commerce, but now they're getting into the artificial intelligence and the virtual reality. But I think the challenge that you have there is also, I think, a couple of things. I think it's the investing, where I think you have the lack of funding, but I also think it's also, can you talk maybe a little bit about how developed is the ecosystem in terms of networks and role models and the access to the information, because I also think that that's very important for entrepreneurs as well.
The ecosystem is important. We have some good initiatives. I think most of the leading universities have entrepreneurship clubs. We have Etohum, we have Galata Angels, we have Endower. So we do have initiatives that promote entrepreneurship. For the ecosystem to become bigger, we need, it has to be a private and public partnership.
Sure.
So it has, the government has a lot to do to promote entrepreneurship. They are taking some steps towards that direction, but I believe it has to be a private-public partnership.
And I have to say, the one thing that I am impressed with, it's not just, I think the government has done a lot of things, but you yourself, as somebody who's been in the private sector, Turkish private sector for a long time, but then I also, I see the Turkish private sector really getting very active in the startup ecosystem. And I think that there's this image, at least I know, I grew up here in the United States, but when you say business, when you say girişimci or you say entrepreneur in Turkey, they automatically think it's just a business person. And there's a really big difference. and sometimes you see the difference here, because I think even here in Wall Street, I think one of the reasons that Silicon Valley has flourished here in California is because it's away from the East Coast and away from Wall Street. Because I think the finance people don't really understand about how do you actually take innovation, invest in it, and allow people to fail. And I think in business, I think there is this, we have to kind of meet our short-term goals, and we have to do that. But I have to say that I think the Turkish private sector they have actually invested a lot in the startup ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about their role?
You're absolutely right that business have this, that they have to think short-term, they have to meet yearly targets, and they have to deliver returns. I also want to add about Valley. Universities are a big, important player, part of ecosystem. So here you have the best engineering universities in the world. I think that was also helpful to develop the ecosystem. In the last years, we started seeing funds impact funds. I think impact funds would be very effective in developing more R&D and more innovation. But in Turkey, I don't know any yet. We don't have a specific impact fund. And an impact fund is a fund that helps businesses, but to do social change, which I believe social change can come through businesses. So that's an idea which we can discuss whether Turkey or our region needs such an impact fund, which I believe they are very important to foster R&D and innovation.
What else is, I think that's a really important point, because we're always talking about what Turkey has and where it is, but I think you bring up a very important point. And so thank you for that. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is investing in research and development, because I think that's a very key component in starting an innovation hub. What are some of the other things that Turkey needs in order to actually build up its ecosystem?
It needs better partnership between universities and private sector investors. It needs better partnership between public authorities and private sector. It needs more awareness, more talk about entrepreneurship, more role models. So we need to put entrepreneurship in the agenda of our society. And to do that, the efforts has to be together. It has to be a partnership of civil society, public and private industry.
And just in terms of entrepreneurs, I think that, I'm an entrepreneur, and a lot of people here are entrepreneurs. I think you as an entrepreneur, I think maybe could you share some insights into things that you wish you knew as you were starting out your business, and maybe some advice that you could share with the entrepreneurs here?
Okay, if I go back now 20 years, it's a long list what I've learned in the last 20 years. So I would have made many mistakes. I wouldn't have invested to the companies that I had to shut it down. So it's a long list. But for me, it's all about some basics. The first thing is when you have an idea, there are very simple tests to that idea. That the idea you have, will it be useful? And if it will, what value or use would you create for who? That's a very basic question that everyone with an idea needs to answer. This product will be useful for this segment. Will solve this specific problem. And it needs to be, you need to be able to explain it with 2 sentences maximum. When I hear entrepreneurs and they try to explain me their product, and after 6 minutes I still didn't get the value, it's not right. So it needs to have a simple, it's going to solve this problem for this segment of business or society. Then I look at, I am a person who I believe And most of the best decisions are done through my heart rather than being. It's passion is very important for me. Everything I do, like my business life, my personal life, it's all one for me. I live my business. I love my business. It's not like separate segments. And for any entrepreneur, I also think what they do needs to come from their heart. It shouldn't be like artificial. They should almost fall in love with their company or their product, but also know how to let it go when it doesn't work. So it can be dangerous. And the third point I want to make before we close it, for me, an entrepreneur is not someone who has started his or her company only. I mean, that, of course, those are entrepreneurs. But for me, my team, I see my team as very good entrepreneurs. They are part of a big company and they see themselves part of entrepreneurs. I was at a conference and I asked who in this room considers themselves entrepreneur, and all my team put their hands up.
Oh, that's great.
So, because it is important in today's world, any organization who is not an entrepreneur in its spirit will not survive. So I also want to encourage young people that you can be working in a foundation and do philanthropic work, but you can approach to that social problem in an entrepreneurial way. Or you can work in a large organization, but act as an entrepreneur, take initiatives, try to create something even in that big organization that comes from your heart are important, I think.
No, and I think that that's actually something that a lot of people overlook. I think everybody's so busy because we hear the word startup and entrepreneur, and everybody thinks, oh, I have to go and start my own thing, but I actually think it's really important to have entrepreneurial people. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to hire entrepreneurial people, but if you have a business, you also want to have people who are forward-thinking and very innovative, but also very, very passionate. I think one of the quotes that I love the best is, I want a job where I never need a vacation from. So I think that's really important. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and to share. But also, I think just for me personally, I'm a Turkish American woman. I grew up here. I'm the daughter of a very strong Turkish woman. And we don't see a lot of role models. So I think it's so wonderful that you could take the time and that you do share your stories. So I mean, just a personal thank you from me to you. What you do in terms of inspiring other people, because I think this concept of the role model is very important in Turkey. And so certainly when I see someone like you and the things that you've accomplished, it really does it does have the inspiration to say, well, this is something that is possible for me. So thank you so much.
You're a great role model as well.
Thank you.